And coming up right now is a woman that I just met a couple of months ago. She is a Toastmaster. I'm a Toastmaster. A lot of the folks on my tech team are Toastmasters, and we're learning a lot of invaluable skills. I was helping with a session that Miss Nadia Gilks presented at a conference with Toastmasters, and I saw her give this presentation about podcasting. And I said to myself, so you've been saying that you want to do a podcast. It was so outstanding. I immediately asked her to join us today, and she consented. Miss Nadia Gilks is an attorney, an artist, and author of the newly released novella, Woke Up Dead. That sounds intriguing right there from the title. She firmly believes that everybody has a story. Not only that, the world is waiting to be inspired by your story. Thought-provoking college courses and offering online trainings, Nadia aims to help people get their stories into the universe. She serves the community as a family law and estate planning attorney. By the way, I might need your services. She is also very active in Toastmasters International. She was too modest to say that she's an award-winning Toastmaster. In this special session, Nadia will walk you through the basics of podcasting and blogging, two great ways to reach current and new audiences. We will explore the podcasting app Anchor, as well as the website building platform WordPress. It is my great pleasure to present to you this morning on podcasting and blogging, Miss Nadia Gilks. Welcome, Nadia.
Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you for having me today. I am so honored that you asked me to be a part of this amazing festival. I feel like I should have started at 6 o'clock in the morning because I don't even know how I can compare to the last presenter, but I am going to try. I am so excited to be here and talk about the world of podcasting. And I'm not really sure what everyone's level is or what everyone does. I know we have some composers, some songwriters, some musicians here. I don't know if we have any engineers, but how many of you have been thinking about a podcast? You can use the raise your hand feature. You can put something in the chat if you have questions about it, if you've always wondered about it. I'd like to know your thoughts on that. All right, we've got a couple people saying they are interested in it. Wonderful. I am all about making things easy. So even if you thought podcasting sounds super daunting, not something I want to do, this might interest you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I appreciated that. And I am just going to get my screen set up really quickly. Perfect. Hopefully you all can see that. And let's get started. I'm right before lunch too, so I know that's another another thing that we got to keep everybody energized and motivated. So now let's jump into the world of podcasting. So this session is for people who think that they're not tech savvy, that hear podcasting and think that may be a little too difficult for me. I am going to show you that you can do it even if you know nothing about technology. If you know how to make a phone call, you can podcast, and it's just that simple. Now, if you are an engineer, if you are tech savvy, if you've built websites, if you already have a podcast, then the information here may be a little basic for you because this is really geared towards people who have never done it before. Some people may have no idea what a podcast even is. So we are starting at the ground level here. Some of you may be asking, what is a podcast? And a podcast is essentially online radio. The only difference between back in the day when you actually had to tune into a radio show at a dedicated time or you missed it, the podcast is where you actually record it and then you store it online and your listeners can come at their leisure and download it and listen to it when it's convenient for them. But essentially it's just audio and it can be a show geared around any topic that you choose. Who has a podcast? Well, practically everyone. Hopefully you recognize at least some of the people on this page. You probably would be surprised to find that most of your favorite celebrities, stars, those you get inspiration from, motivational speakers, almost everybody has a podcast. It's so easy. It's such a great way to reach your audience, and you can do it for free. So there's really no reason not to. And many people take advantage of this platform. About 600 million people have a podcast. Why should we do it? What do we get out of it? Well, there's actually quite a few benefits. First one, it is a great way to entertain. Most of you out there are in the music business because you're here at a music festival. So you are very tuned into entertaining an audience, whether that's music, storytelling, whatever your niche is. This is a great way to bring your story, your music to an audience. You can connect with your listeners, and many people use this as a marketing tool because it just helps to establish yourself in your business, in your chosen field. So a lot of people will find a podcast before they find a newspaper article or a blog. Some people don't have time to read or don't sit down to read, but they may listen to you while they're doing other things. Building your audience. The more you do it, the more your audience will grow, just like with anything else. Whether you do have a blog, a podcast, whether you do write for magazines, whether you're putting out music, your audience tends to build on itself. So this is just that additional piece of marketing that you can have to offer to your audience, and maybe even build a new audience who likes to tune into podcasts. Cost effective. Today, I'm going to show you how to do it absolutely free. So if you have a cell phone, you are already ready to go. And this is one of my favorites. It really offers a personal touch because people get to hear you. They get to connect with you through your voice, through your inflections, your tones, your pitch, how you laugh, how you tell a story. So aside from putting words on a page, people really get to connect with you on a deeper level because they feel like they get to know you. You're essentially having a conversation with your audience. And my favorite, you don't have to get dressed because most of the time I'm not dressed. This is a very special event today. I woke up early and got dressed for all of you because here in quarantine land, that's not my normal anymore. So getting started. When you decide that you're going to try podcasting, and once again, it's free, so there's no harm in just giving it a try for a few months, the first thing you're going to do is choose a topic. What is your podcast going to be about? What are you going to talk about? If you listen to Oprah and she's talking about living your best life and meditation, if you're listening to John Gray, he has his sermons most of the time. If you're listening to Joel Osteen, he's another one on the live your best life type of thing. Iyanla is doing the fix your life. You can have a podcast on anything. You can tell stories for those of you that are out there who are authors, if you want to read snippets of your book or talk about your book, the conversations that it leads to. It is absolutely endless what you can do. And if you're a musician, of course, it's a great way to showcase new music as well. After you've selected your topic, then you need to choose a name for your podcast. Just like a TV show that you can go to time and time again and you know because it's branded what the show is and what it's about, you're going to do the same thing for your podcast. Create a title. So if it's Karen's Cupcakes or Carol's New Tunes, whatever catchy that you want to create, that is going to be the name on your podcast that people will use to relate to and know that this is your work once they get used to you. You're going to create cover art. So similar to an album cover where you will have that on your CD. If anyone buys CDs anymore, I'm old school, I actually do. But just like a CD cover, you're going to have cover art for your podcast. And that is just going to be that image where when you're looking at a sea of different titles, just like the one I showed a couple slides ago. When people see a bunch of podcast covers, they know yours right away because they get used to seeing the same cover art. Just like people can go in a store, see a rack of CDs, and if they've seen your image online, they know when they see it, that's Carol's CD, that's Janelle's CD. This is the same idea with your podcast. Most people do a photo shoot for this, but it can be a logo or any other item that you choose to brand yourself. And lastly, you're going to decide on the format of your show. What do you want to bring? Are you showcasing new music? Are you interviewing people? Are you doing snippets of the news? Do you have a question and answer segment with the audience? What is going to be the format, and how long is your show going to be? 15 minutes is a good starting point. It's enough to grab people's attention, get a lot of information out there. Some people have podcasts that are up to an hour. If you listen to The Breakfast Club or any of those radio type shows where they're doing some news, some music, and going over current events, those shows are a bit longer. I say make it as short or as long as it needs to get your point across, but people will normally let you know, and you'll see this later in your algorithm, what they're listening to, how long they're tuning in, and you can decide if you want to fine tune after a few weeks to make your show shorter or longer. Now let's jump into actually making a podcast. And I have found an amazing resource called Anchor, which is literally a one-stop shop. All you have to do is download Anchor to your phone, or you can even use it on your laptop. And once you have access to this site, you can create your podcast right here and have it distributed from this app. It's available in the App Store for those of you that use Apple products, and it's also available on Google Play for everyone else. The website, and you want to make sure you note this, it's anchor.fm. It's not a .com or .org, so anchor.fm. And if you want to tune into my actual podcast, it's anchor.fm/Nadia Gilks. And I actually made one just for this event today so that you see kind of the end result of what we're going to talk about. So download it or find it on the website. And if you want to go along as we do this, I'm literally going to walk you through making your own podcast right now.
Okay,
Before
Nadia,
you continue,
we don't see your screen, so can you double for us?
That's so weird. I'm sorry. You didn't what?
We don't see your screen anymore. We started with it and it dropped off a few moments ago.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Thank you for letting me know that before I got too far into the presentation.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so we'll see what happened and get it back up and running. What was the last slide that you saw? Because I didn't see it drop off.
the last slide that I
I don't hear someone. Hello?
can you hear me, Nadia? This is Tawanda.
Yes, Tawanda, what's the last slide that you saw?
The last slide that I saw was, did you have something that was right before choose name for podcast, I think?
Okay. Are you back to seeing my screen now or no?
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay. So choosing and deciding on the format. So these were the 4 steps to getting started.
Right, we didn't see those.
Okay.
For a
Okay.
second, and then people can take notes. Thanks.
Okay, wonderful. And I did have the handouts as well. I think Carol may be dropping them in the chat or have them available to you later. So this presentation is actually a handout also. So you can have this later to walk yourself through it also. And this is what Anchor looks like. So you'll see the purple background and you know you're in the right spot, and you can download it to your phone, your iPad, your tablet, or you can actually go right to the website and use it and record your podcast from there. So once again, it's anchor.fm. And my podcast is anchor.fm/Nadia Gilks. So you could see that right there at the bottom. Now we're jumping into actually starting to make your podcast. When you download to your phone, this is what you're going to see. It's going to start out asking you for your podcast settings. That's where you're going to name your podcast and put a description so people who visit your page can know what your podcast is about. It's going to ask you to choose a category. So mine is just a hodgepodge of whatever I feel like talking about that day. I didn't really fit into a category. So I put personal journal, but you could put music, education, transformation coach. You can find your section and fill in your category there, and your language. If you happen to speak another language than English, there is a long list that you can choose from so your audience knows what to expect. It's also going to ask for your personal details, your name, your email address, choose the password, and what website you want to link to your podcast. And I always suggest that people cross-market themselves. So anytime you have a chance to put your link, do so, because people who like your podcast might see that website and tune into it so that they could see the other things that you're doing. And on your website, you can have all of your social media links and an extended bio. And that just lets people who have shown interest know a great deal more about you. So be sure to tune into those pieces of information and fill everything out so your profile is complete. Now we get to where we are actually recording our podcast. And again, most of you being musicians, recording should not be foreign to you. You're already used to hearing yourself on microphones and on audio. So this is where you get started developing your show. You will see a main page just like this one, and it gives you 5 steps. I set my podcast up before I started recording, but if you didn't want to put in your podcast and account details right away, you could just start at step number 1 and hit that first button. It will take you to the screen on the right, and you see at the bottom where there's that purple button. If you see that purple button and you press it, all you literally have to do is push that and hold your phone. Make sure you're talking well into your microphone. Say whatever it is you want to say for however long you want to say it, and then you are podcasting. When you are done, you click done, and it's going to ask you, do you want to publish? And if you choose to publish right at that moment, it will publish for you and distribute to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and several other podcast hosting sites. And that's literally all you would have to do to podcast. So just push the purple button, talk. When you finish, stop, click publish, and you are done. If that's all you want to do. Of course, we walk in excellence. We like to give our audience a little bit more. So maybe you want to amp up your recording. And there is several ways to do that. And actually, to make sure that you all can hear this, because I'm not sure if I shared my screen or shared my sound, I'm going to reshare just to make sure I check that box, because I have sound effects in here that I actually want you to hear. So the first one is a trailer, and similar to a movie, you have that 1-minute advertisement that gets you into the movie theater. When you see it on TV, you're like, oh, that's action-packed. I want to see that. Or, oh, that seems really funny. I want to see that. And it's normally 30 seconds to a minute, a commercial that tells you and entices you to go see the film. A trailer for a podcast is exactly the same. You are going to record an advertisement up to 1 minute. And on Anchor, they are going to leave that right at the top of your page. So the minute someone new lands on your page, they see your trailer and they can play that and hear what your show is about and decide if they want to tune in. So even though you only have 30 seconds to a minute, you can make that as creative as you want to. You can put all kinds of music or do spoken word or have some sound effects in there that's really going to entice the listener and let them know what they can expect when they jump on your page. Next, you might want to consider intro and outro music. So the intro is just what people will hear at the beginning of every podcast. People normally pre-record this and put this at the beginning of every episode. And after people start tuning into you on a regular basis, they know immediately when they push play on your show and they hear that music or they hear those opening words that, yep, I'm in the right place because that's her intro music. I have one recorded just so that we can get an idea of what this sounds like.
You're listening to Comedy Central.
Now that one was really short, but it's for Comedy Central. So they don't need a whole lot of intro because people normally know what they can expect from Comedy Central. This one was actually for Trevor Noah's show. So it was just a quick introduction, and you hear that at the beginning of every show. And when you hear that, you know that you've landed in the right place because that's his opening. Similar to having an opening, you also want to have something to leave the listeners with, some parting words, and that would be your outro. And your outro is usually a little bit longer because you want to give them a call to action. What do you want your listener to do once they've listened to your show? Do you want them to go follow you on social media? Do you want them to visit your website, purchase your book, download your album? What is that call to action? And you also might want to put tune in every Tuesday at noon or whatever time you drop new episodes so that they can know when they can expect that next show from you. So your outro might be about 30 seconds. I probably wouldn't go longer than 45 because at that point your show is over and people are starting to tune out. So you want a short but powerful outro that gives the listener something to do.
The Daily Show with Trevor Noah, Ears Edition. Watch The Daily Show weeknights at 11, 10 Central on Comedy Central and the Comedy Central app. Watch full episodes and videos at thedailyshow.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and subscribe to The Daily Show on YouTube for exclusive content and more.
There you saw that even for Comedy Central, theirs was pretty extended and they had several call to actions for you. They want you to follow them on social media. They want you to tune into future shows. They want you to share and subscribe. So there's where you would just ask your audience to do whatever it is. And this is perfect when you do have a project coming out soon, or you do have an event that you may be throwing and you want people to remember. Maybe you're planning a yearly event and you're 5 months out and you always want people to remember, go on my Facebook and share this flyer, or be sure to tell your friends about this event that I'm having. Whatever that call to action is, keeping it in the outro, having it pre-recorded, and all you have to do is put it at the end of every episode. It keeps you from having to repeat it every week, or sometimes people forget to say, oh, share, subscribe, like. If you already have everything recorded, you know that all of your call to actions are in there, and you're just putting that recording at the end of your show. Another way to add embellishments that I love are sound effects. So throughout your show, you may want to have a few little extras. Maybe somebody says something profound in an interview that you're doing and you want to add applause, or you want to add a crowd cheering. Maybe you have a new person coming in, you're waiting to interview someone and you want to give it a homely feel, so you add a doorbell ringing and say, oh, my next guest has arrived. There are so many different sound effects that you can use that amps up your show and just makes it a good listening experience for your audience members. Now, I do caution, you don't want to overdo it. Some people really don't like sound effects, and if you have too many, it can go from a nice embellishment to really aggravating. So you want to fine tune and maybe just use 2 or 3 over the course of an hour. So be careful with sound effects, but they are a great way, when done correctly, to amp up your podcast. And the last one, you can monetize your show. This show that you are doing for free can actually make you money. Once you build your listenership up, there are companies who will ask to advertise on your show because companies want to be where the people are. They need to get their product in front of an audience. They want a new audience. They're consistently looking for new people to buy into whatever it is they're selling. So if you have a large audience, you are an asset to companies. So just keep in mind that as you grow, you can put advertisements in your show and people will pay you based on how many listeners you have and how many people click on their link and go to your company's website and purchases their product just coming through your show. So let's listen to an example of an advertisement.
Get more from your morning cup. Introducing Starbucks coffee with golden turmeric. The taste you love blended with turmeric, ginger, and cinnamon for a balanced morning. Learn about Starbucks coffee with golden turmeric by visiting athome.starbucks.com/more.
So that was for Starbucks, and the show that this was on had about 300,000 followers. So just know that depending on how many followers you have, Starbucks probably is not going to advertise with you if you have a couple hundred, but there are companies that will. So as you grow and your market grows, then your asset and the strength of your show and how much money you can bring in grows. So you can get to the level where you have Starbucks or Coca-Cola or other big name companies advertising on your show and paying you just based on how many people you bring to their table. So keep that in mind as well. Now, after you've decided that you've been podcasting for a few weeks and you want to keep this up and you've started adding some embellishments and your show is growing, I'm going to walk you through how you actually put those different embellishments in your show, again, right from the Anchor app and for free. On the left, this is the screen that you see when you're recording. So remember before, we push that purple button at the bottom and you're talking into your microphone and you see the timer was going. You also see in the middle, it says add flag. So if you get to the point where you know your show's format and you know, okay, I'm going to talk about the news for 20 minutes, and then I'm going to interview someone for 20 minutes, and then I'm going to take questions from the audience for 20 minutes, and I want to break up those segments with a sound effect. You can add a flag, and that's going to put a flag in your audio recording so that when you go to edit it later, you know exactly where you want to put those sound effects, and you don't have to listen to your whole recording to figure out where you need to put whatever those sounds are that you want to use as an embellishment. So this is a great tool that I don't want people to overlook because it makes editing your podcast really, really easy. And again, you're going to go ahead and talk for the entire length of your show. And when you're done, you just click stop. If you don't want to publish, you would say, no, I don't want to publish, and it will take you where you can edit your audio. And that's where you come to the screen on the right. Here I put 2 flags in the show because there were 2 different segments that I wanted to add embellishments to. And you could see those flags end up right at the breaking points that I wanted to set. So that's what you're doing on the left and what it ends up looking like on the right. When you want to add your effects, you're just going to hold down on that flag, and then you see this black bar that says split, and it's asking you, is this where you want to split your audio? So you can go ahead and play and listen to it to make sure it is the exact spot. But if you put the flag at the right point, then you can go ahead and say, yes, this is where I want to split. And it will split this audio up into 3 different pieces for you. Once it's split into 3 different pieces, you see on the left, this is what it ends up looking like. So you've got your 3 different segments now. So you went from 1 long recording to 3 little recordings because you are going to add some effects in your show. And what I love about Anchor is that they already have the effects built into the platform. So if you happen to not have anything, if you don't have your own sound effects, if you don't have your own music, if you don't have different things that you want to put in your show, they have a plethora to choose from. So the interludes in the middle are all the categories of snippets of music that they already have for you. And I just selected the calming one, and you can see that that drop-down menu gave me, there's only about 8 on the screen, but the list actually goes down to about 25. So you could just go and listen to each one and see which interlude or which little sound that you like. And when you find one, you can select it and actually drop it into your recording. The same thing at the bottom where you see sounds, that's where you would have your sound effects, and songs is where you would have your songs. So you get to decide how you want to embellish your show, and you can use this copyright-free music and these copyright-free songs to put them right into your podcast if you don't have your own. If you do have your own, if you notice in the upper right-hand corner, it says import, you can actually click that and search it on your phone and find your own sounds and your own music and import it right into Anchor. So you have it there time and time again if you have something that you use on a regular basis. This is what the different pages look like. Again, you can see on the bottom that that's just a scroll menu. Everything is color coded. So you know when you're in pink, those were the interludes, the green, the voice messages, the blue are songs. So you can choose again, whether you want messages, songs, interludes, sound effects, put into your show. And what I love about Anchor is that if people go to anchor.fm and go to your page, they can listen to your show right from Anchor, and they have the option as a listener to leave you a voice message. So they can respond to your show, they can ask a question, they can give you feedback. And the great thing about this, as you see on the left-hand side, the green, the voice messages, is you can actually capture their audio and put that into your next show. So if you do have a question and answer segment, you could say, well, last week we had a question from Sarah. Here's what she asked. And then you can actually play her voice, play her question, and then respond to it. And that just gives your show an interactive feel, even though you're pre-recording it. So this is one thing that I love about Anchor, and I haven't seen this on any other system. And again, this is when people listen to your podcast right in Anchor. If they're listening to it from Apple Podcasts or Google Play, they won't have that option. So if you want feedback from your listeners, you might want to share that Anchor link so that they can land right on your Anchor page. I selected several things that I liked and I put it into my show. So a couple slides ago, we just had those orange 1, 2, 3 segments that we broke up. And then I decided I wanted some interludes at the beginning and end because I don't have my own intro and outro recorded. So I just found little snippets of their songs and I put it in the beginning and end. And I broke up those segments with the flags because I wanted a sound effect there. I wanted to change the topic that I was talking about, change the segment. So I added a little bling sound and a little mystery sound. So this is your entire show lined out. This is what you've embellished your show with, and then your audio is in between, and you've got all your sound effects together. So once you're happy with the way that you've created your show, you can just click save in the upper right-hand corner, and then it's going to take you to a main page where you can actually listen to this show from beginning to end. Make sure that you like the sound effects that you've added, the music that you've added, and when you are happy with your show, then you can publish it to the audience and they will hear this entire show as opposed to the audio that you created in the beginning that was just your voice and no other embellishments. And, oh, I had my note there. A note about monetizing your show. You would actually add your advertisements in the same way. And Anchor makes this really easy. All you have to do is push that little $ symbol at the bottom right, and they will find companies to advertise on your show. So you will see a screen that says, record an advertisement for Anchor. They will actually give you a script that they want you to read. You will read it, and then you will let them know in that same way that you chose where you're putting your music. You would say, this is where I want my advertisement to go. And if they have a company to advertise on your show, they would just automatically put it in. If they don't have a company to advertise on your show, then your podcast will just keep playing. But one thing to keep in mind when you are trying to monetize your show, a lot of companies only want to be right in the middle of your show. So you might want to consider that as well when you're working out your format. The ones that pay the most are the ones that are right in the middle of your show, because they feel like people will at least get to that point before they tune out. If you try to put an advertisement towards the end, you might not get a lot of companies who are going to accept that spacing. So just a note to keep in mind as you're creating your show. Now, at this point, I actually want to walk you through in real time what it actually looks like. So I am actually going to share my phone and pray that this works, because we tried this all night last night. But I just wanted you guys to actually see, because it's one thing when you're looking at the screenshots, and you guys will have the screenshots available for you, but it's a different thing when you're actually seeing how it actually maneuvers. Okay, so are you guys seeing my phone right now? Are you seeing my screen, my phone?
Yes.
Yes, no, okay, yes, perfect. So this is actually on my phone. So if I actually wanted to record a podcast right now, I can start just by pushing this button. You see the timer is going. I'm actually recording myself right now. And let's say I interviewed Carol for 20 minutes, and then I say, okay, I want a sound effect right here, and then I'm gonna take audience questions. I would hit that flag button. That's flagged, and then it keeps recording, but it's going to put that flag in the audio. So when I come back later to edit it, I know that that's the spot that I said I was going to have a break and put a sound effect. You can record as long as you want to, say whatever it is you want to, or have your music playing or what have you. And when you're done, you just push stop and you've got your audio ready to go. It lets you trim it or save it. I'm just going to go ahead and save it right now, because I want to bring you to the next screen. Well, I really don't want to save it, but but that's how you record it. So you record that, and it will take you to trimming it, editing it, adding background music, and all of those different things. Now, the icons on the bottom were the other screenshots that I had, and I just wanted to show you what that looks like. So all I'm doing is swiping left and right. So when you swipe to the left, this is where you can listen to any messages that people have left you, and you can go ahead and capture those messages and put them in your podcast. I don't have any, so I can't show you that, but this is where they would wind up. You can have a library of your podcasts right here. Anytime you want to go back and listen to your own podcast, all the ones that I've done are already here. You see your drafts as well as the ones that have been published. Swiping to the right, here are all those little interludes that I was mentioning before, and they have tons of different categories. So depending on what your story is about or what your podcast is about, you can choose the audio that works best for you. I don't know if I play one if you'll hear it. And you'll notice that they're really short, because this is really meant to be just a quick intro, outro, or breaking up scenes in your podcast. So those are the interludes. Swiping to the right again, I come to that teal background where your sound effects are. And this I use to break up segments. So again, it could be a door slamming, it can be crowds cheering, it could be scratch the record, something really interesting just happened. So you can see that you can get really creative with that, but too many of those and you probably will start to annoy your audience. So again, be very, very sparing with those sound effects, because there does seem to be a fine line between it added a nice emphasis to your show or it got overwhelming. And then here is where you can actually use songs that are on your phone. Now, a note about using songs. If you have songs in your show that you've uploaded from this page, they are only going to play on Anchor, because Anchor wants to protect themselves and you from any copyright issues. So if you have songs from here on your podcast, when it exports to Apple Podcast or Google Play, they are not going to export the song with it. So if you are doing a music-based podcast and you want to use your own music and you know that you have the copyrights and everything is fine, you probably want to record your show outside of Anchor and then upload it as a full production, because Anchor doesn't know the difference between a song that you created and you decided to play a Mary J. Blige song. It just doesn't know the difference. And you can get sued very quickly if you use somebody else's music without their permission. Trust me, I've walked that path. So so you don't want to do that. So there are ways that you can pre-record your show, and I'll go ahead and talk about that in a little bit, but I just want to pause and see if there are any questions right now. I see that someone asked about subscription fees. Once again, that app is completely free. Everything that I showed you was completely free. So once you download the Anchor app, or if you don't want to download the app, you can go to anchor.fm on your web browser and be taken to their page, and you can record from your web browser, or you can record right into your microphone like you just saw me do. Where can we catch your podcast? Anchor.fm/Nadia Gilks is my Anchor page. And people have also told me that they've heard me on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you search my name, Nadia Gilks, I have 2 podcasts. One is for Toastmasters, and another is just a general, what's Nadia thinking about today? Handout will be dropped in the chat. Okay, any other questions before I move on to how do 60 million listeners find a podcast? Okay, so earlier I said, yeah, there's about 60 million people that have a podcast. And, not everybody is Oprah. I'm not saying that all those podcasters have 5 million listeners, but it's so easy to have a podcast that it's just a great way for anybody to use it to amp up whatever they're doing. It's a great way, depending on what you do. If you're a real estate agent, you're a singer, you're an author, to establish yourself as an expert. It's just a great way to add followers. So anyone can have a podcast, but it's up to you to market yourself. So what I always tell people to do is, when you do the podcast, share it on your Facebook, share it on your Instagram, share it on your Twitter. So whatever you already have growing, drive people to that podcast so that they can see you have another piece that you're offering to them. You have some advice. And again, they're hearing your voice. So it makes it a lot more personal than reading a 280 character tweet or reading a Facebook posting. They can hear you. They can hear you interview someone else or be interviewed. They can hear your music. They can hear your laugh, your stories. So it's just, to me, a great way to add to your social media. And it gives you content, because all of us who are trying to build an audience right now, content is hard to come by. Content can be exhausting. So don't always reinvent the wheel. If you were interviewed somewhere, put that on your podcast, and then put your podcast on all your social media platforms. So that's just another piece. But yes, you put it out there with the 60 million other people, and it's up to you to market yourself so that people can find you. Now I'm going to go back to sharing my screen because I don't see any more questions. And I just want to give you a little more of how to amp up your podcast if you choose to. So you can use your phone, and the first few episodes that I did with my phone, and people were actually surprised because the sounds pretty good, but your phone is not the best of equipment. And those of you out there who are in the music business, you know that. Are you going to record a song in your phone, or are you going to a quiet studio with equipment, mixers, microphones, etc.? Well, of course, the studio is going to give you a better output. And when it comes to podcasting, or even making video podcasts or YouTube videos, your sound is probably the most crucial element in any production. People will give you grace for about 10 episodes, but after that, if your sound is crackly or just not easy to listen to, people probably aren't going to tune in for long. So I wanted to just add some equipment to this PowerPoint presentation just to give you an idea of what you can shoot for. Right now, I'm just using a very basic $45 microphone, but it sounds a lot better than if I was just using the microphone in my laptop. So something that makes me sound a little closer, a little brighter, a little robust. You want to add a good microphone to your recording so that people have a nice, clear, crisp sound. So I've given you 3 different levels of microphones here for those of you that don't already have your own microphone. All of these can be found on Amazon, and I have a beginner level, a mid-level, and then a more professional level that's about $400. Now, the next one that I'm shooting for is the Blue Yeti, specifically because it says musical instruments, and I don't sing, I play instruments. So that would be my choice, but you want to look at the descriptions when you're shopping for equipment to make sure that it is geared towards what you're going to do. If you're just talking, almost any microphone will accommodate that. But if you are playing instruments or doing different things, then you want to make sure that your microphone is geared for the service you're going to provide. So I have microphones here, and again, my handouts are going to be available to you later. And I also have, headphones, mixing boards, pop filters, windscreens, mounts. I believe, again, most of you are musicians, so you probably know what a lot of this means. But as you grow your podcast and you start to get more advanced with it, you might just want to consider adding these additional pieces. I prefer to use the same equipment across the board because equipment is usually meant to work with each other. So if you have an Audio-Technica microphone, I would get an Audio-Technica headphone as well. That's just my pet peeve. I believe that products work well together when they come from the same company. Same with my hair products. I use Shea Moisture exclusively because their products work with each other. I don't mix companies. Your mixing board, that's just a great way to equalize sound. If you have a co-host or if you are doing interviews, you probably at some point want to add a mixing board to your podcasting equipment because it's just a great way to make sure that the listener is hearing one level show. You don't want you to be loud and bold because you're in studio with the microphone and then the person that dialed in sounds really muffled and way back. So if you have a mixing board and you have the headphones and you're listening to everything in real time, you can cure any problems in that moment instead of recording an entire show and then realizing at the end that it doesn't sound that good and you're trying to fix it on the back end, which is a little more difficult. Not impossible, but a little more difficult. And then your additional things like the pop filters, which take out the P's and the B's and the pops of air and the windscreens and the mounts and the scissor arms. Those things are generally for your microphone just to give you a better experience. Some microphones will only work with a mount versus some that, like this one, has a tripod. So make sure that you know what you're buying and how it's installed. If you do need extras, again, all of these things are available on Amazon, which is my friend. Here in the quarantine time, I think Amazon has become a lot of our friends, if it wasn't already. I get so excited every day I look out the window and I see the Amazon Prime truck come by. It's my own little thing. So these are just some additional resources for you. There are actually podcasts right within Anchor. So when you download it and you're getting started and you're like, I don't really remember what she said, they actually have podcasts that tell you how to podcast. So a lot of what I said today is actually in their podcast as well. So if you're just starting out and you don't know how to pick a topic, they have What's Your Podcast About? And they walk you through thinking that out. They tell you about recording and microphones. They give you a lot more expensive options than I just did, but work within your budget. It doesn't take a lot to do a podcast. The equipment that you purchase is up to you. And they also have a podcast about your show structure. So again, just thinking about what you are going to feature for your audience. Are you interviewing? Are you playing your own new music coming out? Are you doing a Q&A session? Are you talking about current events? Are you talking about this politics cycle? I hope we're all voting in November. And then you can scroll on this main screen and they will actually take you to other podcasts that you may be interested in listening to. Somehow it knew that I wanted to hear about amplifying Black voices, and they've given me kind of a Black Lives Matter podcast listing right there at the top, and then you can continue to scroll and see what other podcasts might fit your fancy. You might want to listen to a few podcasts before you start your own just to get an idea of how that works and what it sounds like. If you want to take it a little further and really go through a guided a guidebook and find out what you want to podcast about, this is a great tool on the right-hand side. She has a podcast, an audiobook, and an actual physical book. So you want to start podcasting, and she actually guides you through fleshing out, do you want to do this for the long haul? Why do you want to do this? What do you want to talk about? Who is your target market? What is your goal with this podcast? I think her audiobook is about 4 or 5 hours, or you can actually purchase her book and it's more like a journal. So you're writing out the answers to these questions and really thinking about, is this something I want to do? I know me personally, consistency is my biggest hurdle. So you'll see that I was really strong in the beginning, and then I was gone for like a couple months, and Carol asked me to do this, and I'm like, oh, I probably should do a podcast since she wants me to talk about podcasting. So you definitely want to be consistent with it and really have in mind what you are bringing to your audience and why you're doing this. If it's not something you're going to love, then don't commit to it. But I say give yourself a good 6 or 7 episodes, and by then you should have your flow and you could really decide if you want to do this long haul. Audacity and GarageBand are 2 great editing softwares that I wanted to throw in here. Audacity can be used on any computer. GarageBand is dedicated to Apple products, but these are editing software that you could use if you wanted to pre-record your show. Let's say you had your own sound effects, you have your own music, you know how to do a show yourself. You don't necessarily need the easy tools in Anchor. You can create your show, record it, mix it, do whatever needs to be done, add your embellishments, have it put together the way you want to, and just import an entire show into Anchor if you choose to. So I wanted to put that out there. Again, if you have a mixing board, if you do have a co-anchor, if you are having interviews, if people are calling in and you're mixing sounds, Audacity and GarageBand give you a lot more functionality than you might find in Anchor. So this is just some upgraded tools for you. I use Audacity. It's relatively user-friendly, but I would say if you are going to go this route, there are great YouTube videos that teach you how to use these 2 softwares because there is a little bit of a learning curve on both of them. And then some people decide after maybe a year or so that they want to take their podcast off Anchor and put it on a podcast hosting website. And that's an option too. So I just wanted to show you the different popular podcast hosting sites that you can choose from. Podbean is the one that I use, but Libsyn, Spreaker, and Buzzsprout are also very popular. And they just give you a lot more options. They give you actual support should you need it. They give you more ways to monetize your money. You would earn more monetizing through these websites than you would from Anchor. So it's just something to think about as your audience grows. Maybe you want more control over your show. You want to decide where your show goes versus just letting Anchor distribute it for you. So you might want to think about a podcast hosting. And as you can see, it doesn't start out very expensive. You can get a free one. The only thing with the free one is you only have 5 total hours of space. So that means if you're podcasting on a regular basis, you're continually have to delete something because you're going to run out of space pretty quickly. Each podcast is normally about 30 minutes on average. So I would say at least start with the $9 per month plan and then grow from there as you start to get more advertisements. And just a quick note about studios. I probably don't have to tell you guys this, but just in case, if you don't have upgraded equipment, then you have to have an extremely quiet environment because again, microphones pick up all kinds of sounds. And if your sound is not good, if the listener is aggravated, then they're not going to tune into your show. And like I said, if you do find my podcast and you listen to those earlier ones that I did, a lot of people are amazed that I did that with my phone because I made my environment so quiet, but you really want to keep in mind any kind of background noise. When I'm recording, I turn my air conditioning off, which means I don't record for very long because I'm in Las Vegas and it's hot, but I want to produce a good show for my listeners. So I turn my air conditioning off because I don't want that in the background. I record far away from the kitchen. You need to be mindful of like the refrigerator or any appliance that might have a hum. You're in your house all day. You're used to it. but those things show up on your recording, and then people are hearing a hum in the background, and it can be very annoying. So what I tell people to do, and what you probably have already heard, start out in your closet if you have to. We all don't have the gift of a studio or access to a studio, but if you go in your closet, all of those clothes hanging are a wonderful buffer of sound, and that will take out most of the sound for you so that you can have a clear, crisp audio without any of those annoying background noises. So just keep those pieces of information in mind. You don't have to start out spending a lot of money buying a lot of equipment, but until you do, make sure you have a very quiet background so that you still can produce a great show. If you'd like to keep in touch with me, I would love to hear from you guys. If you have any lingering questions from this session, you can always reach me either by phone, text me. I don't really do phone calls that often. Email me or visit either one of my websites. And I think we have about 6 minutes left for questions.
Yes,
Oh, Carol got the Blue Yeti.
I did.
There's like not a microphone, a webcam. There's nothing in the stores right now. Like even Amazon is running out of these things because everybody was quicker on the take than I was. I didn't think we'd be in the house for 5 months, so I didn't run out and buy this stuff. Everybody else did. So you got my Blue Yeti, and
I
I
have
want
to
it
tell you
because that's
that
a great microphone. My background is gorgeous. Thank you, Carrie. My mom actually made this quilt. This is the Underground Railroad, and I have this hanging in my dining room because I try to take my mom with me everywhere I go and incorporate her into everything because she wanted so much for her work to be spread around the world. So this is my little way of putting her work out there. So thank you for noticing that. Does anyone have any podcasting questions? Everybody wants the Blue Yeti. You should have said that, Carol, because now we are going to rob your house.
Listen, I had to look far and wide for the Blue Yeti, and I had to pay a little more than you normally would pay to get it because they know it's in demand.
Yeah. Carrie, yes. If you have an idea of what you want to talk about, I would say just go ahead and get started. Give yourself 6 or 7 episodes to find your rhythm. And then you can start to fine tune your show from there. Once you say, okay, well, I'm able to get people in regularly. Maybe you want an interview portion in your show. Maybe you want to go through current events. And in this cycle right now, there's plenty of current events to talk about, or however you'd like to lay out your show. I would say go ahead and get started. That's kind of what I did. And that's why my show is not necessarily on a specific topic. I just talk about what I'm thinking in that moment. The shows where I'm talking about reality TV gets the most listens, of course, but I don't necessarily want to review reality TV all the time. But I think over time, your audience will let you know what it's navigating to by how many listeners you have. And you can always check that in Anchor. They'll let you know how many times each podcast has been listened to. I have a lot of recordings. How do I record them into a podcast? I'm a preacher. If they're on your phone, or even if they're on your computer, where I showed you that import button, it will let you search your computer and import it into Anchor, so you can do it that way. Or also, if you have Audacity on your computer, you can import it into Audacity if you want to add background music or add something at the beginning or the end. Maybe you want to have a featured Bible verse at the beginning so people know what verse you're talking about, and then at the end, a follow-up comment. You can record audio right into Audacity. You can put audio right into Audacity by choosing it from your computer, create your show that way, and you can import that show either to Anchor or to any of those podcast hosting sessions that I mentioned. And can Anchor help me pull the audio track off my pre-recorded video? No, one thing I don't like about Anchor is that if you record directly into it, I haven't found a way to take your audio out of it. And that's why after maybe you've grown your audience, people tend to move to like Podbean or some other podcast hosting site where they have more control over their art, because you really should have control over your art. Anchor is a great way to get started, but it's not going to help you pull audio off a pre-recorded video. I would YouTube that because I know there's a way to do it, to just pull the audio off and make that into a podcast, but I'm not specifically sure how. And something about the Breakfast Club. The Breakfast Club and many others stream on multiple platforms. Yes, 1 second, because my computer's not plugged in. There. Anchor does that for you. So Anchor has about 6 or 7 networks that they work with. Apple Podcasts, to me, is the biggest one. Google Play is another one. Spotify is another huge one. And then there's a few lesser known, but they will actually stream it to all of those sites for you. And you'll get an email each time it's uploaded onto another site. So you may have to record 2 or 3 episodes so they know you're serious. But once you've got a few episodes, they will actually distribute it for you from Anchor. So you don't have to do anything but record and publish. Facebook Live. So when you Facebook Live, you want to save that to your phone before you upload it to Facebook. And it usually gives you that option. Like you Facebook Live, then you push finish, then you want to save it on the left-hand side to your camera roll, and then go ahead and publish it to Facebook. And from there, you should be able to take that video and, again, YouTubing how to pull the audio. It's probably importing it into Audacity is probably what it's going to have you do as one of the easiest ways. But you would Google or YouTube how you can pull that audio from the video and then just have that as a podcast.
So Nadia, that will have to be our last question. Can you put up your contact information? I am sure people will want to reach out to you to learn more. And I don't know if you're offering one-on-one coaching on this or an online class, but believe me, I think there's a need for it. So while Nadia's putting up her information, let's all put our videos live and give her a round of applause or wave of hands for her fantastic presentation. Thank you so much, Nadia. I don't think I've ever seen a presentation quite as clear or with as many practical examples where I really understood what was going on.
Oh, good.
So,
Thank you
so much. All right, everyone. Thank you, Nadia. Nadia is she has a new book out, and she is putting on her own book festival for new book releases with a group of people who have new books up today.
Yeah, I know,
He
right?
made room
Crazy.
in her schedule this morning to be with us and pushed her time so that she could do both. And I truly, truly appreciate that, Nadia. Thank you so much. I'll be calling on you again. Thank you for coming.
Oh, absolutely. And if anybody wants to, after your festival is done, you can mosey on over to my festival. We'd love to have you. NadiaPresents.com.
NadiaPresents.com. And is that live on Facebook or how is it playing?
It's actually Zoom. So if you go to NadiaPresents.com, you can register and you'll get a dedicated Zoom link, and we'll be going from 3 to 7:30.
Right. So when you leave here at 4, you can go right on over to Nadia's event. She'll still be going on, and check her out. Thank you so much, Nadia.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank
Did
you.
we drop